It all started with a question I never expected to hear, the kind of question that makes your heart skip, your palms sweat, and your mind spin all at once. My best friend's brother needed a prom date, and he picked me. At first, I thought it was a joke. A mistake. Something he'd laugh off in the next breath. But the way he looked at me, steady, serious, almost vulnerable, told me it was real. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment a simple yes turned into the most forbidden, terrifying, and beautiful story of my life. I never thought my last year of high school would begin with a question that would change everything I thought I knew about myself, my friendships, and what it meant to feel alive. Most of my days felt the same, stuck in routine, hiding pieces of myself I wasn't ready for the world to see. My safe space was always at my best friend Emma's house. We had been inseparable for years, almost like siblings, and her home had become my second home. Her parents treated me like family, and I could walk in without knocking, drop my bag on the couch, and feel like I belonged. It was the kind of comfort I never questioned. But one evening, while I was sprawled on her living room floor helping her with a project, her older brother Alex walked in, and everything shifted in a way I wasn't prepared for. Alex was one of those people you couldn't help but notice. He had the kind of confidence that filled a room before he even spoke. He wasn't arrogant, just steady in a way that made you feel like he had everything figured out. He was a senior, already accepted into a good college, the kind of person parents compared their kids to. He wasn't around the house much because of sports, friends, and the freedom of being older, but whenever he did pass through, I always caught myself noticing too much. The curve of his smile, the casual way he tossed his keys on the counter, the easy laugh that made people want to be near him. I kept those thoughts buried so deep that even I barely acknowledged them, because how could I ever say them out loud? He was Emma's brother, untouchable and out of reach. That night, though, he didn't just pass by. He lingered. He asked what we were working on, teased Emma a little, then turned his attention to me. For a second, I thought he was just being polite, but the way his eyes held mine felt different, like he actually wanted to hear my answer. I fumbled through some explanation about our project, trying to keep my voice steady, and he nodded like it mattered. Then Emma groaned, rolling her eyes. "Alex still doesn't have a prom date," she said, tossing a pen at him. "Mr. Perfect can't even get a girl to say yes." She was joking, but my stomach twisted. I waited for him to laugh it off, but instead he shrugged. "Maybe I don't want just anyone," he said. The way he said it made Emma roll her eyes again, but I caught a flicker of something in his expression, something I couldn't place. For the rest of the evening, I couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. It was harmless, probably nothing, yet my brain clung to it like it meant more. The idea of Alex without a prom date seemed impossible. Girls whispered about him in the halls, and he could have chosen anyone he wanted. So why didn't he? I shoved the thought away, reminding myself it had nothing to do with me. I was just Emma's best friend, the quiet one who blended into the background. But a few days later, when I was at my locker between classes, I felt someone step beside me. I turned, and there was Alex, leaning casually like he had every right to be there. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. He asked how my week was going, simple small talk, but the fact that he was even talking to me at school made it feel like the hallway had gone silent, and then he said it. Not in a dramatic way, not even in a way that felt rehearsed. Just calm, direct, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Would you go to prom with me? At first, I laughed, convinced I had misheard him. Prom. With him? It had to be some kind of prank, a cruel joke, or maybe he was just bored. But his face didn't show amusement. His eyes stayed steady on mine, patient, almost gentle, as if he understood exactly how much my world had just tilted. My throat went dry, and 1,000 reasons to say no raced through my mind. Emma would kill me if she knew. People would talk. I wasn't even sure what this meant. Was it just a favor, a way to fill an empty spot, or something more? But under all the fear was something else too. Hope. The smallest flicker of something I had buried for so long, suddenly sparked by the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he saw me in a way no one else ever had. That I didn't answer him right away. I couldn't. My chest was tight, my hands were shaking, and I felt like the ground had disappeared under my feet. Alex didn't push, though. He just gave me that same steady look, like he had all the time in the world for me to figure it out. And when he finally walked away, leaving me standing there in a haze of confusion and wonder, I knew my life had just changed in a way I wasn't ready for but couldn't stop thinking about. For the next few days, I couldn't stop replaying that moment in my head. The words echoed over and over, blending into my thoughts until I couldn't tell if I was imagining them or if it had really happened. Would you go to prom with me? Simple words, but they carried weight I wasn't ready for. I kept asking myself why he had asked me. Out of everyone he could have chosen, why me? Was it pity? A joke? Or something else I couldn't quite allow myself to believe? Each possibility twisted in my stomach, making it impossible to focus on anything else. In class, my pen would hover above my notes but never move, my mind drifting back to the way Alex's eyes had held mine with that calm intensity that made it hard to breathe. Fear crept in just as much as excitement. The thought of saying yes lit something inside me, something warm and dizzying, but immediately after came the shadows. What would Emma think if she knew? She trusted me with everything, treated me like family, and here I was holding on to this secret that involved her own brother. The idea of betraying her in any way made my chest ache. And then there was the school. High school was a place where whispers spread faster than wildfire, where people thrived on other people's business. If anyone found out, the rumors would multiply in a second, and I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to handle that. Despite all of this, Alex didn't avoid me after that day. In fact, he seemed more present than ever. He found small ways to talk to me, to ask about my day, to walk with me between classes even though it wasn't on his way. At first, I tried to convince myself I was reading too much into it, that he was just being nice. But it wasn't just kindness, it was deliberate. The way he leaned a little closer when he spoke, the way his shoulder brushed mine like it was by accident, the way his smile lingered longer when it was just us, those were not accidents. I felt it in my chest, this unspoken message that he was waiting for me to believe him, to trust that he meant what he asked. One night, I got a message from him. Just a simple text, asking if I had finished my homework. It was small, casual, but it made me freeze, staring at my phone with my heart pounding. That one message turned into more, small conversations that stretched late into the night. We talked about school, teachers we couldn't stand, random things that made us laugh. But beneath all of it, there was something else building, something unspoken that made every reply feel charged. Sometimes I'd pause before sending a message, staring at the words and wondering if I was saying too much or too little, but the moment his reply came back, the doubt melted into a thrill I couldn't deny. Still, I hesitated. Every time the thought of saying yes crossed my mind, fear pushed back. I imagined Emma's face if she ever found out. I imagined the way people at school would look at us, the comments whispered behind our backs, the cruel jokes. And then there was the bigger question, was this even real? Was Alex just trying to be kind, filling a space he didn't care much about, while I was letting myself fall for something that wasn't meant to last? The doubt clawed at me, but the longer I avoided answering, the more restless I became. It was as though every second I didn't respond was stretching a rubber band tighter and tighter, waiting to snap. Alex must have sensed it, because one afternoon when I was sitting in their kitchen with Emma, he walked in and casually asked if I wanted to help him carry something upstairs. My stomach flipped instantly, but I followed him. Once we were alone, he closed his bedroom door gently and turned to face me. The air felt heavy between us, and I could barely look at him. He didn't rush into anything, though. He just leaned against his desk, arms crossed, eyes fixed on me with that same steady patience. "You don't have to be afraid," he said quietly. His voice wasn't teasing or demanding, it was soft, like he was offering me something fragile. "I wouldn't have asked you if I didn't mean it." Those words broke something in me. All the doubt, all the second-guessing, all the fear I had built up suddenly cracked. I wanted so badly to believe him, and in that moment, I did. My throat tightened, and my voice came out almost as a whisper when I finally answered. "Okay." Just that one word, but it felt like the ground shifted under my feet. His face softened, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips, not triumphant but relieved, like he had been holding his breath and finally let it go. That I walked out of his room with my heart pounding so loud it felt like everyone in the house could hear it. I knew what I had just agreed to wasn't simple. It wasn't just about a dance. It was about stepping into something forbidden, something that carried risks I couldn't even measure yet. But underneath the fear was a spark, a quiet fire that had been waiting to be lit. For the first time, I wasn't just Emma's best friend. For the first time, Alex had chosen me. The days after I said yes felt heavier and brighter all at once. There was this invisible thread between us now, pulling me toward him no matter where we were. At school, I caught myself searching the halls for him without meaning to, and when our eyes met across a crowd, it was like a secret only the two of us knew. But with that thrill came the weight of guilt pressing on my chest. Every time I sat beside Emma in class or sprawled on her couch after school, laughter spilling between us like always, I felt the sting of betrayal. She trusted me with every part of her life, and now I was hiding the most important thing I had ever felt, and it involved her own brother. Emma noticed the change in me almost immediately. She was too sharp not to. One afternoon while we were sitting in her room, music playing low in the background, she looked at me with narrowed eyes and said, "You've been weird lately." "Distracted." "Who are you texting all the time?" I laughed it off, pretending it was nothing, and shoved my phone under a pillow, but the guilt burned hot in my chest. I hated lying to her, but what else could I do? Telling her the truth would ruin everything before it even began. She eventually dropped it, but I could see the suspicion lingering in her eyes, and it made me restless. Every word I didn't say felt like it was building into a wall between us, one brick at a time. Meanwhile, Alex seemed to sense everything I was going through. He never pushed me, never asked me to explain, but the way he spoke to me carried an understanding that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't experienced before. Late at night, our messages went deeper. We talked about more than school or jokes, we talked about the things we didn't tell anyone else. He told me about the pressure he felt from his parents, the way they expected him to be perfect, to always do the right thing. He admitted how exhausting it was to keep up that image, how sometimes he just wanted to disappear and be himself without judgment. Hearing him open up like that startled me at first, because I had always thought of him as someone untouchable, someone who had it all figured out. But underneath his confidence was someone carrying the same kind of weight I carried, someone who was tired of pretending. The more he shared, the closer I felt to him. I found myself confessing things I had never said out loud before, like how small I felt in the world, how afraid I was of people knowing too much about me, how I sometimes lay awake at night wishing I could stop hiding. Saying those things to him was terrifying, but the way he responded made the fear worth it. He never judged, never made me feel weak for being vulnerable. Instead, he told me I was stronger than I believed, that hiding didn't make me less, it just meant I was surviving in a world that wasn't always kind. Those words stuck to me like glue, replaying in my head when doubt tried to drag me down, but even as our connection deepened, the danger grew sharper. At school, Emma would wave me over to sit with her at lunch, and sometimes Alex would already be there, leaning back with that easy smile that made my heart stumble. Every glance we shared felt like a spark waiting to be seen, and I had to force myself to look away, to act normal. One slip, 1 second of letting my eyes linger too long, and Emma would notice. The secrecy made my chest feel tight, but it also made every stolen glance, every hidden smile feel electric. I lived for those tiny moments, the kind no one else noticed but me. One evening, I was sitting in their living room with Emma, watching a movie, when Alex came in and sat on the opposite end of the couch. My heart jumped into my throat instantly. Emma was too busy scrolling on her phone to notice, but I could feel Alex's presence like gravity. At one point, when Emma got up to grab snacks from the kitchen, his hand brushed mine on the cushion, subtle and quick, but enough to send a jolt through me. I pulled back instinctively, terrified she'd walk in, but the way he looked at me, soft, amused, almost daring, made my chest ache with something I couldn't name. That night, lying awake in bed, I realized how much deeper I was sinking. This wasn't just about prom anymore. It wasn't just a simple yes to a dance. It was about the way he made me feel when he let his guard down, the way his voice softened when he spoke to me, the way he seemed to see the parts of me I thought I had buried. And yet, every time I thought about Emma, about the friendship that had carried me through so much, I felt torn in half. I wanted to believe I could have both, that I could hold on to her trust and his affection without one destroying the other. But deep down, I knew secrets like this didn't stay hidden forever. For now, though, I chose to cling to the moments we had, no matter how fragile, no matter how risky. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just existing. I was feeling something real, and I couldn't let it go. When Alex suggested that we should go out somewhere, just the two of us, I thought my chest might split open from the panic and the thrill tangled together. He didn't frame it as a date at first, he called it a practice run for prom, a way to get used to being around each other without anyone else. But the way his voice dropped lower, softer, when he said it told me there was more to it than that. I hesitated, the fear of being seen, of being discovered, swirling in my mind, but the look in his eyes made it impossible to say no. So I agreed, my voice shaking as I did, and for the rest of that week, every time my phone buzzed with his message, I felt my heart stumble with both excitement and terror. The night finally came. He picked a small restaurant out of town, far enough where no one from school would stumble in and recognize us. I told Emma I was staying home to study, and the lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I pushed it down because I couldn't stop myself from wanting this. When his car pulled up, headlights washing across my window, my hands shook as I slipped outside. Sitting beside him, the air thick with unspoken words, I couldn't stop replaying the risks in my head. What if someone saw us? What if Emma found out? What if I wasn't what he thought I was? But when he glanced at me, offering a small smile like he was letting me in on a secret, the noise in my head quieted for just a moment. The restaurant, everything felt both ordinary and unreal. The low hum of voices, the clinking of glasses, the dim lights, none of it should have felt special, but with him across the table, it felt like the world had folded in, leaving just the two of us. We talked about silly things at first, things that didn't matter. The worst teachers we'd ever had, the weirdest food we'd eaten, the music we liked. But as the night stretched, the conversation deepened. He told me about the pressure of being the older sibling, how everyone expected him to be the responsible one, the one who never messed up. He admitted that sometimes he felt trapped by that image, like people loved the version of him they imagined but not the real one. Hearing him say that made something ache inside me, because I understood it too well. I told him about how exhausting it was to always hide pieces of myself, how it felt like no matter how much I blended in, I never truly belonged anywhere. That he listened. Really listened. His eyes never left mine, and the way he leaned in, the way he nodded as if my words mattered, made me feel like I wasn't invisible anymore. At one point, I realized his hand had slid across the table, fingers brushing mine, tentative but certain. My breath caught, and I froze, terrified someone might notice, but the warmth of his hand, steady and grounding, made it impossible to pull away. For a moment, I let myself feel it, the quiet, overwhelming comfort of being seen, of being wanted, of not being alone. On the drive back, the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy, full of things we both wanted to say but didn't know how. My chest felt too tight with the weight of it all, the fear and the joy colliding. Then, halfway home, Alex slowed the car and pulled over on a quiet road, the sky above us scattered with stars. My stomach flipped as he turned off the engine. He didn't look at me right away. Instead, he leaned back in his seat, staring at the sky like he needed courage. When he finally turned his head, his eyes locked onto mine, and the air between us shifted. He didn't ask permission with words. He asked with his silence, with the way he inched closer, giving me time to move away if I wanted. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Every nerve in my body buzzed as his hand brushed against mine again, and then, slowly, his lips met mine. It wasn't perfect, it was clumsy, tentative, our noses bumping awkwardly, but it was real. Real in a way that made my heart ache and soar at the same time. His lips were soft, his touch careful, like he was afraid of breaking me. And in that moment, under the stars with no one else around, I let go of the fear, just for a second, and let myself exist in the warmth of him. When we finally pulled back, neither of us spoke right away. I could feel the world pressing back in, the weight of everything waiting for us when the night ended. But for that sliver of time, it didn't matter. I sat there with the taste of him still on my lips, my chest trembling with emotions I didn't have words for, and I realized there was no turning back. Whatever this was, however dangerous it might be, I was already too far in to pretend it didn't matter. For the first time, I didn't want to run from what I felt. I wanted to hold on to it, no matter how fragile it was. Prom night felt like it had been circling me for weeks, a storm slowly moving closer, and when the day finally arrived, my chest was filled with both dread and anticipation. Emma had been buzzing with excitement all morning, texting me about her dress, her shoes, every tiny detail. I played along, smiling at her messages, but underneath it all was the secret I carried like a weight in my stomach. She thought I was going just as her friend, tagging along so we could laugh and dance together like always. She had no idea that Alex and I had made our own quiet plan, one that made my pulse race every time I thought about it. The thought of walking into that gymnasium with him there, in a suit, waiting, made it hard to breathe. It wasn't just about a dance anymore. It was about finally seeing what we'd been building in secret come alive in front of everyone, even if no one else knew the truth. That I stood in front of the mirror in my room longer than I ever had before, adjusting my tie again and again, not because I cared about how anyone else saw me, but because I knew he would notice. When I finally walked out the door, my parents barely looked up, offering a distracted smile, but inside, I felt like I was carrying a secret flame. The ride to school was quiet, my hands sweaty against my knees, every stoplight making me wish I could turn back time and slow everything down. The gym was decorated with streamers and lights, the music already pulsing through the walls. Students poured in dressed in their finest, laughter and chatter bouncing in the air. I walked in with Emma, just like everyone expected, and she looked stunning, full of life, completely unaware of the storm brewing in my chest. She grabbed my arm and pulled me onto the dance floor, her smile wide as she shouted over the music. I tried to match her energy, laughing when she spun in her dress, but every part of me was tuned to one thing: where was Alex? I saw him after what felt like forever, standing near the back with a group of friends, his suit fitting him perfectly, his hair neatly styled. He looked different that night, older somehow, more serious. And then his eyes found mine across the crowd. Just a glance, just a second, but it sent a jolt through me that nearly stopped my heart. I looked away quickly, afraid Emma might notice, but that one look stayed with me, burning against my skin. The night blurred into a rush of music, laughter, and flashing lights. I danced with Emma, talked with classmates, forced myself to act like everything was normal, but every few minutes, I would catch him watching me. Sometimes his gaze lingered, soft and steady, and it was like the room melted away, leaving only us. Other times, he looked quickly, almost nervously, like he was just as afraid of being caught. The tension stretched between us, invisible but unbreakable, and I lived for those stolen glances. At some point, the music slowed, and couples began pairing off for a slow dance. My heart thudded painfully as Emma grabbed another friend and pulled them to the dance floor, leaving me standing at the edge. That was when I felt a hand brush against mine. I didn't need to look to know it was him. My breath caught, and before I could think, Alex leaned close enough to whisper, "Come with me." His voice was low, steady, almost lost in the music, but it made my entire body tremble. He led me out of the gym and onto the balcony just outside, where the air was cooler, quieter, free from the pounding music. The night stretched wide and dark around us, the glow of the school lights casting shadows across his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, listening to the muffled music behind the doors, the air heavy with everything unsaid. Then he stepped closer, his hand brushing mine again before finally lacing our fingers together. My throat tightened, and I wanted to pull away out of fear, but I couldn't. The warmth of his hand was too much, too real, too grounding that we swayed there quietly, moving in time with the faint beat of the slow song drifting through the walls. It wasn't like the dances happening inside, no one watching, no one whispering. It was just us, two silhouettes against the night sky, holding on to something fragile but burning. His eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the same mix of fear and longing I felt inside myself. That look undid me, made me realize how deep I had already fallen, how far I was willing to go just to stay in that moment. When he leaned closer, our foreheads touching, my breath shuddered out of me. He didn't kiss me then, not fully, but the closeness was enough to make the world spin. I wanted to stay there forever, hidden away from everything that could tear us apart. But even in the beauty of that moment, a sharp edge of fear cut through me. Because I knew this couldn't last. Secrets had a way of spilling, and the more we held onto each other in the dark, the brighter the risk burned. Still, with his hand in mine and the night wrapped around us, I couldn't bring myself to care. For once, I let myself belong to something dangerous and beautiful, and I held on like it was the only thing keeping me alive. The night of prom should have ended like a dream, but instead it unraveled faster than I could catch it. When Alex and I slipped back inside from the balcony, trying to blend into the crowd, I thought we had gotten away with it. My heart was still racing from the way his hand had felt in mine, from the closeness that left my chest burning, but I forced myself to smile and joke as if nothing had happened. Emma rushed toward me almost immediately, grabbing my arm and pulling me into another dance. She was glowing with happiness, laughing so freely, and for a second I felt safe, like maybe the secret we carried could survive another night. But safety never lasts long when you're hiding something that happens so fast. After the dance, Emma suggested we leave a little early, and I agreed without thinking. Alex followed us out, walking a few steps behind, and when we reached the parking lot, she darted off to say goodbye to another group of friends. That left just the two of us, the air cool against my skin, the parking lot buzzing with voices and laughter. Without anyone close by, Alex reached for my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. I froze for only a second before I let my fingers intertwine with his, my chest rising and falling too quickly. For a moment, it felt almost safe, almost right. But then Emma turned back toward us. I'll never forget the way her face shifted when she saw us. At first, she didn't seem to register what she was looking at. Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowing, and then the shock spread across her features, hard and sharp like a crack forming in glass. She stopped in her tracks, staring at our joined hands, then at me, then at her brother. What is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp with disbelief. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might collapse right there. I pulled my hand away instantly, stammering, trying to form words, but nothing came out right. Alex started to say something, his tone calm but firm, but Emma's face had already hardened, her eyes glistening with hurt. "You lied to me," she said, and the words cut deeper than I expected. She wasn't just angry, she was wounded, betrayed. And I was the one who had done it. She turned to me, her voice shaking. "You're supposed to be my best friend. How could you not tell me? How could you go behind my back with him?" Her voice rose with each word, but what broke me most was the way her eyes filled with tears. It wasn't just about secrets or rules, it was about trust, about years of friendship shattered in seconds. That I reached out to her, begging her to listen, to let me explain, but she stepped back, her jaw trembling. "Don't," she said firmly, her voice breaking on the edge of anger and pain. "Just, don't." Then she turned and walked away, her dress swaying behind her, leaving me standing there with my hands empty and my chest hollow. The ride home was silent. I sat in the back seat while Alex drove, his eyes fixed on the road, his jaw tight. The air between us was heavy, suffocating, filled with everything we didn't know how to say. My mind kept spinning, replaying the look on Emma's face, the way her voice cracked when she spoke to me. I felt sick, like the ground had disappeared under me. I had wanted so badly to protect what Alex and I had, but in the process, I had destroyed the one thing I thought was unshakable, my bond with Emma. When I got home, I went straight to my room, closing the door and collapsing onto my bed. The tears came fast, choking sobs that left me gasping. I buried my face in my pillow, hating myself for the choices I had made, hating the way the happiness of the night had twisted so quickly into something unbearable. I didn't sleep at all. I lay there in the dark, replaying every detail, every glance, every word, knowing I couldn't undo any of it. The next few days were worse than I could have imagined. Emma didn't speak to me. At school, she walked past me in the halls like I wasn't even there. The silence was louder than yelling, louder than any fight we had ever had. People noticed, of course. They whispered, speculated, asked questions I didn't know how to answer. Alex tried to check on me, sending me messages, but I couldn't even bring myself to reply. I didn't know what to say to him either. Every part of me felt torn apart, trapped between the person I had always been and the feelings I couldn't deny. The worst part was knowing that this wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about him either. It was about Emma, about the years of trust we had built, about the promise of loyalty we had always silently shared. And I had broken it. The guilt sat heavy in my chest, a constant reminder that even the most beautiful secrets carry sharp edges, and sooner or later, someone gets cut. The silence between Emma and me became unbearable. Days turned into weeks where she walked past me in the hallways as though I were invisible, her face set like stone, her laughter echoing with other people while mine faded into nothing. Each time I saw her, it felt like a blade pressing deeper into my chest, because I knew I had caused it. I tried to tell myself that she just needed time, that eventually she would understand, but doubt gnawed at me constantly. What if she never forgave me? What if I had lost not only my best friend but the one place where I had always felt like I belonged? The thought of life without her in it felt like staring into a void. Alex, on the other hand, refused to let things end in silence. He reached out to me every day, texts that started simple, "Are you okay? Please talk to me," but grew more insistent when I didn't answer. He found me at school one afternoon, cornering me near the library where no one else was around. His eyes looked tired, but there was something fierce in them, a determination that startled me. "You can't shut me out," he said, his voice low but firm. "I know you're scared. I know you feel like everything's broken, but what we have, it's real. And I'm not going to let you throw it away because of fear." I wanted to argue with him, to tell him that it wasn't that simple, that we were hurting people who didn't deserve it. But the truth was, I couldn't deny the way my heart ached when I saw him, the way his presence steadied me even when everything else was falling apart. I admitted that I didn't know how to face Emma, that every time I tried to think of the words, they died in my throat. Alex listened quietly, his jaw tightening. Then he said something that stayed with me. "She's angry because she loves you. If she didn't care, she wouldn't be hurting this much. Give her time, but don't give up on yourself." Even with his reassurance, school felt like walking through fire. Rumors started spreading, whispers that followed me down hallways, sideways glances that lingered too long. No one said anything outright at first, but I could feel the shift. People noticed I wasn't with Emma anymore, noticed the way Alex sometimes hovered a little too close to me. The questions grew louder, and soon the jokes started. Subtle, cruel remarks muttered just loud enough for me to hear. A shove in the hallway that felt intentional. A laugh from the back of the class when I stumbled over a word. I pretended it didn't get to me, but at night I lay awake replaying every insult, every smirk, wondering if I had made a mistake by saying yes in the first place. Through it all, Alex stood beside me. When someone made a comment in the cafeteria, he was the one who snapped back, his voice sharp enough to cut through the noise. When I kept my head down, wanting to disappear, he was the one who lifted my chin and said I deserved better than silence. One afternoon after practice, he found me sitting alone by the bleachers, my face buried in my hands, tears threatening to spill. He sat down next to me without a word, his presence heavy and steady. Then he said quietly, "They don't get to define you. They don't get to decide who you are or who you love. Only you do. And if they can't handle it, that's their weakness, not yours." Hearing him say that cracked something open in me. For so long, I had lived by the rules of what everyone else thought, what they expected, what they wanted. But Alex was reminding me that maybe, for once, I could choose myself. Still, the guilt lingered like a shadow. Even as I leaned into him, even as I let his words comfort me, Emma's face haunted me. She hadn't spoken a word to me since that night, and I didn't know how much longer I could carry the weight of her silence. It was a Saturday evening when Alex finally decided enough was enough. He told me he was going to talk to her, whether I liked it or not. I panicked, begged him not to, afraid it would only make things worse, but he was steady in a way I couldn't be. "She deserves to hear the truth," he said. "Not just pieces, not just rumors. She deserves to know that what's between us isn't some game or betrayal. It's real." I didn't go with him, but I waited, pacing my room like my body couldn't contain the storm inside me. Every tick of the clock felt like a hammer against my chest. When his message finally came hours later, we talked, my hands shook too much to type back. He didn't tell me what she had said, only that it wasn't easy, but she had listened. That single word, listened, was enough to spark the tiniest ember of hope in me. Maybe it wasn't forgiveness yet, maybe it wasn't even understanding, but it was a start. That night, lying in the dark, I realized something I hadn't before. Loving Alex wasn't just about the fire of stolen moments or the thrill of secrets. It was about standing in the storm, taking the blows together, and still choosing each other anyway. And if Emma could find it in her heart to see that, maybe there was still a chance to piece together the broken edges of my life. For the first time in weeks, I let myself believe that even in the middle of all the pain, there was something worth fighting for. The message came on a quiet afternoon, when I was sitting at my desk pretending to do homework but really staring at the same blank page for an hour. My phone buzzed, and for a second I thought it was Alex again, checking in like he always did. But when I picked it up and saw Emma's name on the screen, my breath caught. It had been weeks since she last spoke to me, weeks of silence and distance that felt like punishment I deserved. My hands trembled so hard I almost dropped the phone. The message was simple: "Can we talk?" 2 words, but they lit up every corner of my chest with equal parts hope and fear. I didn't even hesitate. I typed back, "Yes. Anytime. Anywhere." She suggested the park near her house, the same one where we used to meet almost every weekend when we were kids. That choice alone made my heart twist because it told me she was reaching back to something we once shared, maybe trying to remember the bond that had been buried under hurt. When I arrived, the sun was just starting to set, painting the sky in soft streaks of pink and orange. I spotted her sitting on a swing, her head down, her hair falling forward. For a moment I just stood there, taking her in, too afraid to move closer. Finally, I forced my feet to carry me toward her. She didn't look up until I was standing a few steps away, and when she did, her eyes were red-rimmed, but steady. The silence stretched between us, thick with everything unsaid. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through me. "Why didn't you tell me? All this time, why did I have to find out like that?" I swallowed hard, searching for words that felt honest enough. "Because I was scared," I admitted. "I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want you to think less of me, or him, or what we felt. It wasn't about hiding from you, it was about hiding from myself. And I know that doesn't excuse it. I should have trusted you enough to tell you. I should have believed in us more." My voice cracked on the last word, because that was what it really came down to. Us. Emma stared at me for a long time, her swing swaying gently. Finally, she let out a shaky breath. "You were my best friend. My person. The one I told everything to. And then suddenly there was this huge part of your life you kept from me, and when I saw it, it felt like you didn't trust me at all. Like I didn't matter." Her voice wavered, and my chest tightened painfully. "But then Alex came to me. He told me how much you mean to him. He told me you were scared, but he also told me how happy you make him. And I realized, maybe it wasn't about not trusting me. Maybe it was about you trying to figure out how to trust yourself." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't look away. "You do matter," I whispered. "You're everything to me, Emma. And I hate that I hurt you. I hate that I made you feel like you weren't enough. You've always been enough." My voice broke, and before I could say more, she stood up and stepped forward, pulling me into a tight hug. The kind of hug that held years of history, laughter, and tears. The kind of hug that made me feel like maybe forgiveness wasn't impossible. When she finally pulled back, there was a small smile on her face, though her eyes were still wet. "I'm still mad at you," she said, her voice half teasing, half serious. "But I don't want to lose you either. And if Alex really makes you happy, then I guess I'll have to figure out how to live with that." He's still my brother, after all. And you're still, you. Relief flooded me so fast I almost stumbled. It wasn't a perfect fix, not by any means, but it was the beginning of healing. Over the next weeks, things didn't magically go back to the way they were, but slowly, piece by piece, the cracks began to mend. Emma started talking to me again, not about everything, not all at once, but enough to make me believe she was trying. Sometimes the conversations were awkward, sometimes they were sharp, but at least they were happening. Alex gave her space, careful not to push, but his presence was always there, steady and patient. For the first time, the three of us existed in the same room without walls of anger between us. One night, sitting outside under the stars with Alex, I finally let myself breathe. I don't know what the future looks like, I admitted, leaning against him. I don't know if people will ever really accept us, or if things will ever be easy. He wrapped his arm around me, pulling me closer, and said softly, "Easy doesn't matter. Real does." And in that moment, I understood. The road ahead would not be smooth, there would be whispers, judgments, maybe even more hurt. But there would also be love. Real, messy, complicated, undeniable love. And maybe that was enough. Looking back on everything, I realized that what started as a forbidden choice had become something greater. It wasn't just about a prom date or a secret crush anymore. It was about courage. About standing up for the truth of who we are, even when it feels terrifying. About trusting that the people who matter most will find a way to stand with you, even if it takes time. Emma had reminded me of the bond we shared, Alex had taught me what it meant to fight for love, and somewhere in the middle of all the pain, I had found myself. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was hiding. I felt like I was living. And that was worth everything.